You're listening to the Platform Launchers podcast. I'm John Stange, and this week we're going to be talking about marketing through partnering with or promoting other platforms. So just think about that concept for a second. Marketing through partnering with or promoting other platforms. I think it's a useful thing for us to wrestle with. And I want to give you an example of some marketing that I noticed in my own life that actually had an impact. Last night, I had to take a long drive. It was a beautiful drive. It's a nice time of year. But because we are only 1 week away from the official start of summer, my car was covered in bugs by the time I got home. And it was actually somewhat disgusting just how badly it was covered in bugs. And I did not want to leave the car that way for any length of time. So I actually this afternoon took the car to the car wash and just got it cleaned up. And the wash was very easy to find because of the signs they have all along the road. I also knew that their vacuums were free to use because they promote that too. And they even made sure that I knew all about the upgraded packages and all about the upgraded services that they offered while I was there. And actually, while I was vacuuming my car, 2 employees from the car wash greeted me, and then they were talking to me about their favorite cars and the things that they liked about the style of my car. And so it was a very interactive experience, and it was filled with all kinds of marketing and filled with all kinds of conversation. The experience was very good. My car is cleaned. My floors are even vacuumed. And I can tell you more details than you would probably want to know about that business because their promotional efforts are clearly working for them. Now, what does that have to do with anything? Well, here's my thoughts. When you're building an online platform, you need to think about promotion as well. You need to be thinking about, how am I going to promote this? In fact, many podcasters and many bloggers and many writers will tell you that promoting their content is one of their biggest struggles and one of their ongoing mysteries. People wonder, how do you actually do this? I have content and I'd like to promote it, but I don't know how to do it. In fact, I actually shared about this in our forum inside Platform Launchers. And one of our members said, I'm not really even sure how to go about this. Now, we're going to get really practical here in just a second, but I bring this up because you may feel the same way. It may feel like it's mysterious, this idea of how to promote your content, how to help other people find out about the content that you're creating. Maybe you've been creating content for a while, but you're looking at it and you're saying, it's not gaining traction at the speed that I'd like it to gain traction. Or maybe like this member of Platform Launchers that I was chatting with just yesterday about this subject, maybe you're just starting out just like this one particular member is. And maybe you're trying to figure out, how do I build an audience from scratch? Is there anything that could help jumpstart the process? Is there anything that could help me actually get this going? Well, I'm convinced that one of the best ways to quickly and affordably, and when I say affordably, most of the time this is free, and almost all the time this would be free, what I'm about to suggest, but I'm convinced that one of the best ways to quickly and affordably spread word about your platform is through partnering with and promoting other platforms. So let me suggest a few ways that can be done. And the first few ways here that I'm going to suggest are specific to podcasts, but I think that you'll find that they have application outside of that as well, but they have really clear, easy application to podcasts. And I'm going to start with something very, very obvious and then go a little bit further after I state the obvious. So the first way that I think that we could partner with or promote other platforms is by becoming a podcast guest. Now, one of the little secrets about hosting a podcast, I host 4 podcasts. There are others live on the call with me right now from our members club who host podcasts as well, and some are brand new podcasters. I was just talking to John Beakey, one of our members, who's got some ideas for a podcast that he's planning to start very soon. And one of the little secrets about hosting a podcast is that hosts are always looking for great guests to feature on their shows. You want great guests. You're always looking for them. They're looking for people with interesting stories. They're looking for people that have an ability to communicate a message that will effectively inspire their audience. And so reaching out to hosts and getting to know them and offering yourself as a guest can be a great way to partner with somebody else. Now, you can do this as a traditional guest, or you can make yourself available to co-host an episode of a show. I've done that a few times, where instead of just a traditional guest type experience, it was more of a co-hosting experience. Another member of our members club, Brad Miller, that's how he and I recently went about a show that we recorded together. We did it more like a co-host type experience than a traditional interview. And both of us were pleased with how it came out. And in the process, what we were able to do was promote each other's platforms through each other's podcast. So I thought it was pretty helpful. But in the process, what ends up happening is you'll inevitably have the opportunity to share more about your platform and the content that you're creating, while you're also trying to help promote the content that the person that you're partnering with is putting together. So that way, I think I'm kind of starting more obvious, and then we're going to get a little bit deeper with this as we go. But for starters, just being a podcast guest can be a really useful way to be able to partner with another platform for mutual promotion. But here's another thing, still kind of on the obvious side, in my opinion, but invite others to be a guest on your show. And this is a great thing to do for many reasons. But if you host a show, I think it's certainly wise to invite others to be a guest on it from time to time. As you do so, you'll be able to promote them. You'll be able to promote their content. You'll be able to promote their services. And here's the other thing that people don't always think about when they invite a guest on their show. After the recording is finished and after the show is produced, your guests might share it with others. Now, I recently experienced the benefit of doing this after promoting someone through an interview on my show. And this was someone with a well-known platform. What she ended up doing was she shared the content with her audience. She didn't do it right away. It was actually several weeks after I did the interview, but then she shared that content with her audience, and it gave a huge boost to my platform. One of the largest boosts that it has received since I started it. And what I noticed was the fact that downloads and views and subscribers, every one of those metrics, every one of them increased. And now it's weeks later. It's actually been about a month since that was shared on her platform. And I'm still reaping the benefits. I'm still getting views. I'm still getting subscribers. I'm still getting downloads because she was generous in sharing. And I was generous in inviting her on. So I brought her on. I didn't ask for anything in return. I just appreciate the content she's producing. And so I shared her content on my show, on my program. And then she did that favor for me afterward. And it's been wonderful. I hope I've been able to help her platform, but she's certainly been a help with mine. All right, let me give you another way that I think we can ultimately be marketing our show through partnering with and promoting other people's platforms. And the third way is through promo swaps. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this. This is something I find useful, and I've done this on occasion, but a simple way to generously spread the word for one another, specifically in the world of podcasting, but this could be done. There's applications to this in writing and other fields as well. And this could also be done in video if you're creating YouTube content. But in the world of podcasting, they tend to call this a promo swap. And this is where you play a promo for the other show at some point during the course of your show. It could be something you record in your own voice, or a lot of times what I'll do is I'll ask somebody to just record a real quick promo for their show and then send it to me, and then I'll air it on my show in their voice. I've done this in cooperation with Jennifer Harshman. She's a member of our members club. I've also done this with Rich Avery, another member of our members club, where we did kind of like a promo swap thing where I had them share a promo that I then played on my podcast. And often these are done in the pre-roll, and the pre-roll is the section right at the start. So the pre-roll is the beginning. Mid-roll is the term they tend to use for if you post something in the middle of a podcast. And then post-roll is what comes at the end. A lot of times that's where I tend to do most of my promoting of different things, in the post-roll, even though that's probably not the best. The best spot is actually the mid-roll. I just don't usually like to interrupt a show. And so a lot of times when you're doing promo swaps, a lot of times those will be done in the pre-roll. And sometimes the way they're done is you'll have the person come on and say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so from such and such platform. And then they give just a brief one sentence overview of their platform, and they say, then you're about to listen to this show with my friend John Stongi. And it's a very simple thing. And it's just and then maybe you record something like that they could use as a pre-roll on their show. And it's a lot of fun. In fact, just a few months ago, I was actually approached by another podcaster who asked to do this, and I agreed. And then we both spent a day promoting our shows to each other's audiences. But then we went actually a little bit further, and I had them submit a full episode of their show, and I submitted a full episode of my show, and we aired each other's shows on each other's platforms, and just tried to build awareness for the content that each person was creating. And so it's a generous way that this sort of content can be shared, and platforms can be shared with each other's audience. But promo swaps or even episode swaps can be a useful tool. Now let's talk about writing. And another way that this can be done, and I use this actually quite frequently. I think I've used this more than any of the things I've suggested thus far, but using guest blog posts on your platform can be a very, very useful thing, both for you and for your guest. So guest blog posts are things, basically where you invite somebody to write a post that you then share on your platform. And I always tell people, if they're going to share something like that on my platform, I encourage them to put links back to their website, invite people to come back to their website to see other things. I try and be really generous with it. I don't tend to put a lot of parameters on it or a lot of restrictions on it. I just allow people to share their content. And especially if it's something that is content that fits really well with my content, and I'm comfortable with their ideas and some of the things that they're producing. And here's the thing, I use this a lot, but ironically, even though this can be a great way to promote each other's content, what I've noticed is that only about half of the people who have agreed to do this with me, who've agreed to create a guest blog post that I could then share on my site, only about half of them historically have followed through with actually sending me something to share. And I'm guessing the reason for that is that it takes a bit longer to write a blog post than it does to record a brief promo. So when I've done promos with people, I think I'm at a 99% success rate with that. Guest blog posts, maybe somewhere around 50%. But when it's done, it could be a very effective way to cross-promote each other's platforms. Another way that this can be done through the written word is through newsletter shoutouts. A few months ago, I was reading a friend of mine, his weekly email newsletter. And as I was reading it, I was several paragraphs into the newsletter, and I read my name. And in addition to reading my name, I read a full-fledged endorsement of my platform. And I was surprised to see this. I was also grateful to see this. But just think about this. If this is something that you did for somebody else, how do you think it would make somebody else feel if you gave them a shout out in your newsletter? And do you think that they might also like to be shouted out in yours? Do you think that they would also be willing to promote your content if you were doing certain things like this generously for them? I think it generates a lot of goodwill and helps facilitate some good cross through that goodwill. Here's another tool that you could use if you're looking to cross promote with another platform: hosting a webinar together. Now, I'll give you an example of this as I explain what I'm talking about, even though I think it's a bit obvious here. But in March 2020, when much of the known world was abruptly shutting down, various groups and various businesses realized that this was also an opportunity to serve people in new ways. And one company that I've worked with in the past, a company called Servant Keeper, what they decided to do was they decided to organize a webinar for church leaders. And the focus of the webinar was to help assist church leaders in March of 2020, to help assist them figuring out how to attempt to host their services online, to host services remotely. And so they put together some content and they asked different people to speak. And one of the people that they invited to speak on this webinar that they were organizing, they have a very large email list. They have an email list, I think, of about 35,000 people. And so they sent that out to 35,000 people. And I was invited to participate in this webinar. They gave me just a 5-minute slot, but they asked me to briefly share some key principles that they thought would be almost like a pep talk, something that would encourage church leaders who were feeling concerned and who were feeling a bit unsure what to do. And so in the process of doing that, my content was shared with 35,000 people, and 12,000 people, or excuse me, 1,200 people, not 12,000. I wish it was 12,000. 1,200 of those people were live on the call at the moment that it was shared. They were live on that webinar, but then it ultimately got shared with 35,000 people that are on their email list. And that was a really helpful thing, I think, for them to be able to serve their audience. But it was also a very helpful thing for me, because inevitably they help promote my content and they help promote my platform. And I was really grateful for that. And so with that example in mind, can you think of a webinar that you might be able to host with another content creator, with somebody who creates content that's similar enough or complementary enough with the content that you're creating, that maybe you guys could partner together and host a webinar, and you could each share it with your email lists. You could share it with your audiences. You could share it with your blog readers. You could share it with people that listen to your podcast. You could promote it that way, both promoting at the same time, and then both inevitably promoting each other's content. This could be a great way to factor some generosity into your marketing efforts. And it tends to be something that's mutually effective. It tends to have benefit for both parties. Something else that you might want to consider doing, and this is kind of where we'll finish up for this week, but hosting an online summit or a live event can be another way that you cross-promote with somebody else. So I'm familiar with people that have hosted online summits and live events where they have invited hosts of other platforms to present their ideas and to speak. And they've, for some of them, they've had these things go on for several days. So they've invited many people. And I have to say, I just experienced this personally with Podfest that was down in Orlando just a few weeks ago. Podfest allowed me, they also allowed Brad Miller and a few others to speak on a panel at their most recent in-person conference. And I also, when I was just checking my email this week, I just received an invitation to submit a speaker proposal for their online conference that's coming up this fall. And so you see two ways that they're doing this. They're doing this for in-person events. They're also doing this with online conferences. And here's what's happening for them. Here I am with my members club talking about Podfest. And those of you maybe watching content that I'm sharing on YouTube are hearing about Podfest. And those of you listening to the podcast are hearing about Podfest. And those of you reading the blog are hearing about Podfest or reading about Podfest. The idea is, in offering this generosity, this opportunity to me, I've been vocal about sharing about their events and the work that they're doing. So they're giving me an opportunity to promote my content via their platform, but I'm also very much promoting theirs. So it's a big win-win. This idea of cross-promoting through, platform generosity is definitely a type of thing that benefits all parties. So let me say this as we wrap up. In my experience, there has come no harm from being generous with my platform. As I've been generous with the platforms that I have, and just done my best to serve other people, there's no harm that comes from that. And it seems truthfully like every time I have been generous to others, that generosity has come back to me many times over. So I just want to give you a word of encouragement here. If you are at a spot where right now it feels like you're struggling to gain traction for a newer platform, or if you've been developing content for a while and you just need a boost, this might be a very effective approach to consider. This might be something to do really right away. And I would encourage you, for starters, just think about, blog content that you could share for other people, because that inevitably puts you on their radar and encourages them to send you content that you're then promoting for them, and you're not necessarily asking for anything in return. And then you could also offer yourself as a podcast guest, or you can invite people onto your podcast. You do the promo swaps. You could invite each other to speak at events that you're hosting. There's all sorts of things that you could do. There's even more things that we could add to this list, but you see the idea. The idea is basically marketing through partnering with or promoting other platforms. And I think a lot of times people approach marketing like it's all about getting something from somebody else. And what I'm suggesting with this is that you look for opportunities to partner with other people to make their thing better or to serve them or to just generously promote what they're doing without giving a whole lot of thought immediately to what they're going to do for you. Because again, what I have noticed is that it comes back to me more times than not, and it's been mutually beneficial as I've tried to promote other people's content. They've inevitably promoted mine and shared about it through word of mouth or shared about it on their shows, and it's really helped. And so if you really feel like you're stuck right now, I'd highly encourage you to go about this route: market through partnering with or promoting other platforms and see how it goes. I actually think it's one of the most effective ways that we can gain some steam and gain some momentum for what we're trying to build. Now, one last thing before we finish up: if you are someone that is in the process of developing an online platform, you have a message that you want to share, and you're looking for some tools and some help that will allow you to do that, and maybe even a community that'll help challenge you and hold you accountable with some of these concepts, let me invite you to take a free 2-week test drive of platform launchers. You could do that at platformlaunchers.com, and you could join us for 2 weeks and check out all the training and different details that we have inside our training vault. We've got quite a bit. You could also join us for these calls live. As I'm recording this right now, we have our members club live on the call, and we engage in some really good discussions about these things. And so that's part of the benefit. We don't air those discussions on the podcast. That's members content only, but we'd like to share it with you for a couple weeks if this is something that you think would benefit you and your platform. So again, just go over to platformlaunchers.com and join us if this is something that you feel like would be a good fit. And I'll even let you know about something we have free over there right now. If you're interested specifically in developing a YouTube channel and you'd like to figure out how to get one going and also how to even monetize it, right now I have a free video from our members club that you can watch right there on the website. Just go to platformlaunchers.com and you'll see a link to be able to follow that. You'll enter your email address and then you'll be able to watch that video. It's about an hour long, and it'll give you the tools and the tips and the tricks that you might need to develop a very successful YouTube channel that eventually can become something that you can monetize and turn into another stream of income. But that's it for us today. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode, and we look forward to catching up with you again next week. Have a great week.